Hello, my name's Rachel Veltman, and this workshop that I'm about to explain is following a live art class that I led for our wider school community during lockdown. This workshop though could be run at any point and really links well to well-being, mental health, just more than just creating an artwork. I guess it will allow students or participants to really think about their emotional state at any present time and respond to it with an artwork. So the workshop lasts about an hour. This video won't last an hour, obviously. What you need to have ready are A3 white or cream, better if it's cartridge paper. 6 sheets is a lot, maybe 3 sheets is fine. Pens, better if they're just black, in different thicknesses, the bolder the better. A ruler actually as well, glue stick and scissors, colour plastic bags or colour paper, and a plant form or an image of one that the participant likes. So how did we do this? So the aims of the workshop were to create an artwork in an hour, to reflect on lockdown life or reflect on your mental health position in life as it is, exercise creativity, alter a person's perspective within that hour maybe about their life moving forward, a bit of hope, time for just them to create and to energise them, and that is a lovely acronym that spells out create. So the aim is to create together. So dead easy, start with an A4 cartridge paper sheet. Basically they need to divide that sheet lengthways, so into 8 strips, so definitely along the long edge, and they don't have to be equidistant strips. They can be equal or they can be randomised, and rule lines. I then do a little bit of chatter about the language of mark making, and there's so much. If you just Google mark making, and you can get your participants to do that, you get these lovely mark making grids. And I spoke a little bit about how mark making has its own language to communicate emotion, mood, how you're feeling. And so that is really worth spending a little bit of time talking about, and the fact that they're non-representational, well, in the main on those examples, of anything in the real world. They are literally just marks, and you can link thoughts and feelings to them. So I was then showed them with their paper. I'll just get that back. This was my example that I made in about 10 minutes using quite a fat pen. I was talking about my lockdown frustrations, so more focusing on, I guess, the negatives rather than the positives at this point. So each of the strips, almost like bars of a cage, were representational of some of the things I found frustrating about lockdown. So I like my daily walks, but I do feel like I go round and round in circles, same old walk every time. The monotony in that second strip of just lines going in different directions. Eye strain using screens, kind of like boggly eyes and squiffy eyes with spirally lines going everywhere. Too much screen time, all the boxes there, slightly representational but not really making a pattern. Backache from sitting constantly down and not moving around enough, with the zigzaggy lines, and then those blobby shapes at the bottom represented to me picking up after my family all the cups and the pieces of clothing that seem to get scattered around the house constantly, and I'm more aware of it because I'm at home. So that was my example, but I did give everyone freedom just to go off and think about their own experience of lockdown and what would be representational for them using mark making. And I gave the participants about 20 minutes to do this, and it was really lovely. I did this on Zoom. It was really lovely because then the participants just keyed into that, and we could share, and I flipped backwards and forwards from different screens, and we could share ideas and what was going on. Okay, so the second stage of the workshop is once they've filled their A4 sheet, the aim is to take the one short end of their A4 sheet and cut from it, so across the short width, 1 centimetre or 2 centimetre strips. So you probably get about 4 of those if you cut them off the edge. There was some reluctance to cut from their artwork, but I told them it would all be okay, and to cut those off, and so you're left with a square rather than a rectangle of your base artwork. You then take those strips and place them perpendicular or at right angles on your base layer, swapping around the patterns so that they don't match up, and then using a pen to kind of make those strips stand out a little bit more by colouring in at the edges. So I gave people another 5 or so minutes to do that task, and stick them down obviously with glue. We then spoke about how this grid that they'd made, this abstract patterny grid, represented their emotional state at that given time. So this was about lockdown, but it could be about just general frustrations and feelings in life. It might be a nice task to do with students facing exams or other pressures. So we talked about that being a grid and representational of our state. And then the idea was to cut into it, and I showed them that using an A3 page behind their grid, they could maybe open up their panel that they'd made and make a space within it. So I literally cut mine in half with another little strip and glued that down with the strip kind of slightly positioned away from the other strips in the middle, so you've got kind of 3 separate strips. The space representing kind of the hope and the opening up of their mental well-being in whatever they're going through. But it didn't have to be like that. I showed them you could cut a door into it, or a window shape, make a frame out of it, or just like I did there, cut 3 strips and space them out on the A3 page, or a circle in the middle, or other windows. And you could then obviously take the shapes that you cut out and re-stick those somewhere else on your A3 sheet, or diagonal. And off they went and did this really beautifully. Some people really took this off in their own direction in a way that I hadn't expected, which was really lovely. Okay, then after that, which probably took another 5 or 10 minutes, we went to the discussion about adding some colour. So I'm quite keen on using found materials, so colourful carrier bags were recommended for this workshop. So once they've got their coloured carrier bags and they looked at plant forms, so I had a Japanese money plant that I showed them. This is kind of folded up carrier bag, so you can cut more than one shape at one time. So this is the money plant leaf shape, which I was going to cut, and then I cut some other leaf shapes out of other colour carrier bags, and then showed them how you can then lay those down on your base with the gap in it, so that the organic forms leap out of spaces. And that was really lovely, and off they went and did that and cut out all sorts of shapes that they were keen to use. And again, sticking those down with Pritt stick is most effective. So the final stage of the workshop was to encourage them to do that. They could finish it there, so that could be the end product, or you could go away and, using baking parchment and iron on a medium setting with no steam, iron the artwork so that the plastic melts into the base of the paper, and that can be a really effective kind of organic way of fusing the plastic onto the paper, not just with glue. It's quite good to recommend people, once they've ironed it for 30 seconds, it doesn't need very long, to leave a heavy book on top of the baking parchment while it cools down for about a minute before lifting the parchment off. And there you can see my slightly melted ironed in shapes, which I quite like because they're almost more organic and slightly haphazard. It just feels a little bit more fluid than my original cut shapes. Again, you could then leave it there and just call it a day there, or if you are more of a maximalist and you want to add loads of stuff into it, I then showed them how you could then move on and cover the gap with PVA glue and scatter all sorts of things into your gap in the background with threads and buttons and sequins to create a lovely explosion of colour coming through the backdrop of mark making. And that is really the end of the workshop. A really lovely thing to do in school or out of school. If you wanted to do it with staff or a well-being session, that could work really well as well. So I'll leave that with you. Have a go and let me know through my Instagram pages if you've created some artwork from this and if it's been successful. Thank you so much.